Hey, everybody, welcome to the Find and Follow podcast, where we are all about helping you find and follow Jesus in your everyday life. I'm Scott, your host, joined today with Craig and Kyle, back at it in the podcast HQ. How's everybody doing today? Feeling good? Feeling alive? Kicking?
Feeling good.
Yeah?
Like I should.
Feeling fine.
Feeling fine?
Fine as frogs here.
All right. Kyle's on the baby watch. You guys are in the last month-ish here. Give or take. Everyone's got a good guess. It's give or take.
Give or take.
You were just saying today, like if you have to leave during the podcast, not that anybody, people might be listening, later and be like, wait, what? Like, listen, this is just how baby stuff goes.
36 days is what?
And anybody who's had a kid, when you get into the 36-day window, anything could happen at any time. It could be 36 days. It could be 42. It could be 22.
Lindsay was getting a little stressed last night. We like finalized the baby go bag stuff. Like we had it like.
Do you call it a go bag? I usually think of like that's what
go
the CIA guys have in the floorboard.
What do you call it? A hospital? An overnight bag? What do you want?
No, we should for sure call them go bags. I just think of like, do you have multiple passports in there, handguns?
Yeah.
Do you have currencies in
lots
many
of
different
cash
countries?
in got the euros.
You got some Bitcoin in there.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. This is the first she had a doctor's appointment.
So it made it feel real, or what? What was
No, she has been feeling again. She's cramping more, and she's feeling. I mean, she's 8 months pregnant, so she's feeling a lot more pregnant. And so she's just
9 months pregnant.
Yeah.
Anyways.
There you go. And so she's feeling it. So she goes, "Hey, I don't know. This it feels more real now. It could happen any day, right?" So she was. And
is
she
that new? Was that first time where she was kind
for
of more
her?
expressive?
Yeah, she hasn't been feeling great. She feels it a lot more. So yeah, she's okay. This is soon, and we're almost fully ready. There's just a little bit. Yeah, she was like, "Okay, I want you to get the bag ready." And
you're ready. You told me the other day you practiced the car seat.
Yeah. Oh, I got it all down.
That is the only checklist on the way way out of the hospital is the first baby.
Can you do this?
Someone walks you out and looks like you're not an idiot, that you have one and it's installed, and then they let you go. Yep. That's the only criteria for being a parent.
Yep. That was a Wednesday night. She was at Fusion, and I read it and did the straps and got it on the setting. And
you're qualified to raise a child now.
Got it ready. But it's interesting. So we had a doctor's appointment tomorrow, and I've been at every doctor's appointment with her. I've gone together, and we've done it. And,
great job. Gold stars on the chart across.
But our doctor had surgery come up tomorrow when our appointment was, so she had to switch her appointment to today. And this morning I had this and a bunch of meetings and stuff, and I said, I really can't. I already moved some meetings from Thursday to Wednesday, and so she's going alone. So she's a little... She was like, I don't want to go alone, and I want to be there too. And so I told her, hey, text me or call me if there's anything.
This is just a routine. We just are checking like we do every week.
We're up to 2 weeks
every
now.
2 weeks.
Yeah, every 2 weeks. And after this one or the next one, we'll go to every week. And so if there's anything that I need to know, I might get a phone call.
All right. We'll be on the lookout here. So that's a lot going on for you guys in the world. It just kind of creates that, I don't know, excited nervousness, energy around every day or every moment of like, oh, what's that? What, you okay? What's happening? Is that?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm fine.
Even last night, like I worked on a bunch of other stuff at the house just in case, like, if we're gonna get up and leave, and we're gonna have someone come to our house to watch the dog, and
the go bag's on the ready.
Yeah, the go bag and just cleaning stuff up. I did a bunch of lots of little stuff that I've been kind of putting off just because I'm like, if this happens, I want this to be clean and that. So I was going at it last night while she was kind of just chilling. So,
Craig, do you remember those days?
I do.
They're way back.
They're a distant memory, but I do remember those days.
41 years ago? I'm trying to remember how old my brother is.
Well, he was born in 81.
Yeah.
So he's
41.
41.
Yeah.
In April. He turned 41.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you to remember 41 years ago, your last kid having those, and the first kid having those, what's this like? What's it?
Oh, yeah.
Happening?
And the first one is always the more anxious.
yeah,
You
I don't know what I'm
second
doing
time
at
around, I was
all.
like,
I'm like, what do you do? How do you do that? I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, ready? Newsflash. That's all of parenthood.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Every day, every stage, you're like, we don't even know what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
Amy and I, same day, same situation. We're like, what, with a thing, right? We're like, what do we do here? What, like,
it
can we
really
go back
is,
to poopy diapers and you just aren't sleeping?
It really is it's a significant thing, I think, that we have to get a license to be able to drive. We have to, pass tests in order to graduate from college. I mean, there's all kinds of metrics in other areas of life, but to be a parent, nothing.
You got to be able to put a car seat in.
Well,
and even that,
and not even that.
Yeah.
Not even that. You could have a kid at
Nothing.
home and nobody's checking.
We were talking about to my grandma, who she's turning 90 this month, and we were talking about car seats and all this stuff, and if we were ready. And this, I think, came out like, "What did you guys used to do?" And she's like, "I don't know. We held them in the front seat. Like there wasn't even seat belts, right? Like
Exactly.
And I was like, "Oh, what car seat you got? Is it safe and crash test rated? And are you doing this stuff?" And now they have anchors in every car and the thing that's built for car seats. And she's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I drove with the kid in my lap. I don't know, right?"
That's pretty much how it was.
but we're a little more aggressive drivers, a little higher rate of speed out there, and there's some
A little bigger machinery.
some crackheads out there driving around.
Crackheads.
Right before podcast, somebody was telling me about a story of some lady was tripping out on something in a parking lot last night, and they had to escort her away. So, anyways, it was fresh on the brain.
Crackheads. Okay.
Yeah. So as we're transitioning we went from new babies to crackheads to Jesus and the scriptures. It is a wild ride on the podcast
Try to keep
today.
up.
Try to keep up. Listen fast. As we're jumping in, Jesus actually, I
what
don't
are
know.
you saying
I'm
right
not
now?
saying
Are
that.
you a crackhead? Like,
I was gonna say he finds some crackheads, but
I knew you were gonna go.
but they're
with
not crackheads. They're
Yeah.
demon possessed people, but they're crazy people. Can we put them in that category? We would say that's crazy person, whether it's
beyond
spiritual, it's spiritual influence or a drug influence.
Lots of demons that he cast out were fairly routine as far as Jesus' ministry was concerned. But this guy was the extreme.
That I feel like that last little bit is the story of my life, where there's a bunch of thoughts and the mouth isn't keeping up. If you just take that clip out of context, it sounds like crazy Scott.
This is Scott.
This
Welcome
is
to my life.
Welcome to my head. So Jesus, we're jumping in.
Are we going to skip the boat story?
No.
Nope.
I just had to
He
get to
just
the
was on
crackhead part.
crackheads. Yeah.
Okay.
There weren't crackheads in the boat, as far as I know. But we're in chapter 8, verse 23, and both of these stories happen maybe in the same day or within the same 24-hour period, which I think is very fascinating. That if you read them and understand them in context, and if you were put yourself in the shoes of some of the disciples, but it starts at verse 23. Craig, you and I love this part. Kyle, you can jump in if you want. And he got into the boat.
Doesn't get any better than that, right there.
Hey, I'm a boat guy now.
Oh, that's true. You
Yeah,
are a boat guy.
I'm a boat guy.
That's what I'm saying. You can jump in.
Thanks for inviting me to the party.
It's
the boat party.
But it's deep for us laying hands. We covered it last week with Steven when we were talking about, hey, you're in. His softball is big for them. Boating is big for us. Jesus around the lake, always traveling by boat, going back and forth, is one of the main means. I mean, they walked a bunch of places, but I think it was a bit of an escape, too, to get away from some of the crowds. And it was a quicker travel if you're trying to go east to west or something. So he gets in the boat, and that's just always a good time. Has there ever been a time, Craig, for you where someone's like, hey, I got a boat,
day,
I'm getting in a boat, and you
a bad
didn't
day
get
on
in?
the water is better than a good day at the office.
Even if someone said to me at the dock, hey, I think my boat's got a leak, I want to test it out, see what's happening, would you come with me? I'd be, absolutely.
Of course.
Right?
And we've had some bad days,
We've got podcasts full of stories of bad days.
We do.
There's so many.
But they're all memorable and they're all good, and I wouldn't trade any of those memories.
Yeah, they're great. So,
But it's kind of making me mad a little bit to think about, because last year this time I was on the boat, and we had really good boat days in May, and I was literally thinking about it this morning. It just got me mad. I'm like, why haven't I got the boat out yet?
why is it 52 degrees
Yeah.
and raining
Yeah.
as I'm driving?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I very upset as well.
Anyway,
Trying to.
so Jesus got in the boat.
Trying
and
to-
it was a good boat day.
Well,
it wasn't a good boat day.
It wasn't a good boat day. That's a good lead-in. They had
Yeah.
some bad weather, and without warning, a furious storm came up on the lake, and so this made me think, Craig, of one of our bad boat days that turned out really good was when we experienced the hey
The
boob.
haboob.
Is it you go haboob?
Haboob.
I go hey boob. Can we get into clarification on
I
that?
have no idea what you guys are even talking about.
It's a without warning furious storm.
Okay.
And
It's a micro cell of fierce, intense winds I mean, powerful winds and driving rain, and it's very, very localized.
And the name comes from, it's a Middle Eastern, Northern Africa desert storm name, and I forget what the Habub or Habub means. It's like chaos or something like that. And it's usually a desert storm. And we were at Seven Bays vacationing, and we looked out in the distance, and it was floor to ceiling, if you will, ground to sky, just this wall, and it looked like it was rolling. It was like rounded, and it was just this crazy windstorm, probably 70, 80 mile an hour winds when it got there. And it, just like this, where they're on the lake and the waves swept over the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. And we'll get to the Jesus part in a second, but here are these guys in a boat, furious storm. You got nowhere to go. We had to run down to the beach to get the boat. We'd borrowed my uncle's boat, and it was, at the time, an $80,000 ski boat that it was on loan. And it broke anchor.
It was on loan to me.
Yeah,
I was the responsible party.
He would have killed us all.
He would have started with me.
I know, which would have been worse because then I'm witnessing that, and then I know I'm next. Like, he would have slaughtered us all. And the anchor broke loose. It was a sandy bottom shore, right? And so it didn't have a strong anchor. It broke loose, and then the waves literally were coming over. I drove the boat. You drove the truck and trailer over about a mile or so down to the boat launch. Mm-hmm. And then while we're in harbor, protected Marina Harbor, there's 3 and 4 foot waves at the boat launch coming in.
And people are trying to get their boats out of the water, and it's just insane. And the sheriff is there, a couple of sheriffs, and they're trying to help all of the different boat owners get their boats loaded. I mean, it was craziness.
Yeah, it was probably like 2012-ish. I mean, you could Google it, Seven Bays. There was a poker run happening. Seven Bays, Porcupine Bay, that area on the Spokane.
Lake Roosevelt.
Yeah, Spokane River, what's that called when they meet?
Confluence?
Yeah, when there's a... Anyways, it was a crazy storm.
And Confluence?
Haboob. Hey, boob, Haboob.
Learning new things on the podcast.
Oh, it was nuts. So to put ourselves, I just Googled it to try to remember how to pronounce it or spell it. There was one in Iowa. So if you're curious, you could just Google right now. Last week there was one in Iowa. Somebody's got footage. That's exactly what we saw. That's probably what they saw in the deserty area, like that kind of storm. It has come up. So the Ironman World Championships was 2 weeks ago in St. George, Utah, which is southern Utah desert outside of Las Vegas. And one of the pros had said last time he raced there on the full distance, there was a Haboob. He said it. I was like, oh, are you kidding me? I know about a Haboob. So they were riding their bikes through with the Haboob of 60 mile an hour winds. He's like, it's the only time he got blown off the road in his racing career, and he was in the ditch because of being blown over. So that's what's happening. And I've been in a boat in a Haboob like this, but Jesus wasn't sleeping in our boat. I had my little brother, Ben, and I were trying to wrangle a boat and not take waves too much over and sink the boat because the boat sunk during that storm. The next day we came and bailed the other people staying at the area. We helped bail their boats out and try to get them back floating. I mean, it was intense. But then here's Jesus sleeping on the disciples in the midst of this storm.
A speaker that I really enjoy and respect was actually talking about this passage and suggested something that I've never, ever heard before, and that is that this was not just a storm. It came up suddenly. There wasn't storminess already when they launched, or they probably would not have launched, but it comes up suddenly, like the Haboob. Comes up suddenly on the lake, and then the solution is for Jesus to rebuke the storm. And he said in the Greek, in the account there, and he had a lot of other stuff to support it, it would suggest that this was actually demonically produced. And there are lots of verses. Ephesians 2:2 is one of them, which refers to him, the devil, as the prince of the power of the air. So if he's the prince of the power of the air, it's within his power to cause something like this to happen. Now, why would that happen? Well, because Jesus has done some amazing things, and he's on his way across the lake to cast a legion of demons out of this guy in Gadara.
The crackheads. And so it would stand to reason that the enemy would just be absolutely opposed to that because he's had his hooks into this guy basically all his life. Anyway, interesting little... Yeah, that is interesting. I've never heard that.
Yeah, there's a whole whole rabbit trail to go down there, I think, with me, because I've heard things like that. I remember in middle school, I heard someone talk about this prince of the power of the air. Again, there's a lot of rabbit trails for me to go down there with what that means, what that looks like, the power and the authority of the enemy, Jesus' power over that. What does that look like? So, because I remember I had a youth leader tell me, like, yeah, every time it rains, I go out there and like rebuke it because that's the enemy. It's like every time there's a hey boob or something, like that's the devil at work. And I'm like, whoa, slow down a little bit.
Does that work in May? Because we we get 80-degree weather?
I mean, it is the enemy right now in the Northwest.
So you're buying into it today.
Yeah, now I am.
Okay.
But I mean, it really caused me to pause and again, there's a lot of layers to that and what that looks like. And
I'm not suggesting that every time it is, but by the same token, I'm not suggesting that Jesus is in charge of the weather. The weather happens, right? Again, there's lots of rabbit trails there, but to ascribe a weather condition to either the devil or to God himself is tricky business. A hurricane comes and people die. God caused that, right? The insurance companies call it an act of God. Are we going to hang that on God? Is he the perpetrator of that? Earthquakes, you can go on and on and on. All I'm suggesting is that perhaps on this occasion, this particular storm came up as suddenly and was as fierce as it was because of opposition from the devil. May not be true.
I think it is helpful for our faith to dive into like that scripture you read, right? And to think about this kind of stuff. And then as part of maturing in our faith and properly understanding what is applicable to our lives, to go, hey, we're not going to be totally sure on the demons in the air or where's weather come from exactly, that we don't make it such a primary major thing in our faith, that we understand what the primary major thing is, that we broke God's world because of our rebellion. And so the world is groaning for restoration and redemption, just like we are. And even though we don't, we know rocks and trees don't have feelings and emotions like we do because they're not image bearers of God, they're crying out for restoration and peace and wholeness, which will come one day.
Yep,
that is part
absolutely.
of the future glory. There's a new heaven and new earth, and all things are made right again. So we shouldn't get too every time it rains, every time there's a disaster. But I love it. The disciples do cry out. They woke Jesus up, and they cry out for, Lord, save us. We're going to drown, right? I wonder if Jesus just smirked at him and like kind of closed his eyes again, right? Because he's like, the irony of them to cry out to Jesus to save them when they're asking for a physical thing, and his whole purpose was to save for a spiritual thing. And he's like, oh, you guys, and he tells them, your little faith, why are you so afraid?
The Matthew account here doesn't include this little detail, but the Mark account does. When the disciples are waking Jesus up, they're saying, don't you care? Don't you care? We're about to die. Don't you care? And I think that's really at the heart of this story. It's a point of growth and maturity for them in their faith to realize, okay, just because Jesus is sleeping, just because he's not doing what I want him to do, just because he doesn't seem to be concerned about my circumstances, I'm in this boat about to die with my buddies. Even though it seems that way, it's not true. He truly does care, and he's actually completely in control of the situation, which he'll demonstrate in a few moments, but when they're asking the question, they're not so sure of that. Don't you care? Hey, wake up. If you cared, you would wake up and do something. And how many times have we approached our relationship with God? If you really cared, you would, and then fill in the blank, right?
Yeah, and in the Matthew account, it's kind of interesting to me because I feel like there's this both and that they're dealing with. They are going to Jesus for their need. They are
Which is
going,
great.
hey, we think you can help us. But they're also going, hey, we're going to die. Like they're simultaneously having faith, but a lack of faith, right? And Jesus points out the fact that, well, their faith isn't really fully in him. They're not going, hey, Jesus, just by the way, could you take care of this? We're good. There's a panic and a dread, and I think we can relate to that. But what Jesus points to is like, hey, really have faith in me and trust that I am who I am. And I think it relates back to last week what you guys were talking about with Stephen. And as a listener of the podcast last week, I was just overwhelmed by just parts of Stephen's story. He talked about the fact of him and Brittany just really choosing to trust God no matter what, right? And in the military life, deployment, and like literally going, hey, I'm risking my life for our country, but I trust that God's got me, and I trust that He's got my family. And I've had conversations with Brittany as a military spouse going, hey, I had to trust that my husband was leaving and we could lose it all. Right? And they talked about that with their work, but I wanted him to get into it. And if I was here last week, I would have pressed him a little bit. Like I've heard Brittany say, like, I had to like legitimately say my husband could be gone forever, and I'm okay with that. Not that I want that, but I know that even if that happened, Jesus still has me. And that amount of faith is like, I mean, like, I can't even imagine that. I can't even imagine letting my wife go to a foreign country and being like, Jesus, I trust you that even if the worst happens, you're still good.
You're having a difficult time having her go to the doctor without you.
The doctor's office down the street here. Yeah.
Right? So like that kind of faith, like it's those types of things where it's real life, like that type of faith going, Jesus, we're in the boat and it looks terrible, but the fact that you are here with me means it's okay. It means it's going to be good.
Yeah, and I think, Craig, you brought it up this last week in your message, Out of the Ordinary, just seeing stuff with spiritual eyes, right? Mm-hmm. And who wouldn't be panicked in the boat on just a practical level? We're looking at a fierce storm, ceiling to floor, thing coming at us, wind, water coming over.
It didn't have my attention.
We're in the middle of the lake. We can't. It's too far to swim. We're dead. Like, this is just through the practical, worldly eyeballs, and Jesus is going, spiritual eyes. Yep. See greater.
Something and bigger going on here.
And he rebukes it. He rebukes the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. Again, to your point of, like, is it a demonic thing? And his authority over the ruler of this world, which is Satan, is clear. It's evident.
Right.
He's in charge of the weather. It's his planet, his world, whatever the case may be. And I love it that they're like, what kind of man is this?
That's an interesting thing.
Isn't that? Like, wouldn't you marvel, though?
Who is this?
Wouldn't we say that in so many different ways? You're like, what? Who is this guy? Yeah. That the winds and the wave obey him.
Well, and I think what's happening there is that, I mean, they know who he is, more or less. I mean, they're
kind of. Well, I think they're getting up to speed a little bit.
They're getting up to speed. Of course, they're not really up to speed even until the day of Pentecost. On the Mount of Olives, when he's ascending up into heaven, they're still a little confused about how this, what the game plan is and how this is supposed to go. But they're on the journey. They're following him. They're believing in him. They're his disciples. So they're definitely on the road. But they're discovering a side of him that they haven't experienced quite the same way. I'll never forget when we were in Colombia and I got up to speak and I spoke in Spanish and the interpreter translated for you guys that were on the team there. And I remember Amy's response later. She said, I sat there thinking, who are you? Because she had never experienced that side of me, addressing a group in Spanish like that.
Yeah, that lengthy and...
Yeah.
Yeah, and you always undersell yourself, but you do just fine. And I get it. You're always conscientious, which what makes you great is you're conscientious of, nuances of words or a meaning kind of being misunderstood. But yeah, you can carry yourself just fine. But yeah, the idea that Jesus is the Savior of the world, and he's like, oh, this wind and wave thing is nothing. Like,
right.
Why do you guys don't have faith? And we get on Kyle, we get on the disciples' cases. And they're like, come on, figure it out. But then, I don't know. We sit here today with the promise of the resurrected Jesus, and he says, if you seek first the kingdom of God, you don't have to have any worry for the future. Zero. What you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, where you're going to live, who's going to take care of you. Like, you seek God and his kingdom, everything is going to be taken care of, hands down, guaranteed. And we have that promise from the resurrected Christ as we sit here today. Craig, do you ever worry about what's going to happen in the future? Do you ever get a little nervous?
Oh, I've never worried or been fearful or nervous or anxious about the future ever in my life. And I've never lied on a podcast either.
Right? I do. Do you? Like, get a little anxious and nervous and uncertain about, like, the provision of your life?
Just the Gonzaga Bulldogs with my chest tightening. Just that's
what about thing. As a dad, right?
Your cardiac episode. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? We can get on, like, they're in the boat, but with Jesus, like, they're
so common to,
and we're sitting here with so much provided already, and we're like, I don't know about the future and my job and the situation, or how am I going to parent, or how's it going to work out in my relationship with my spouse. And yet the resurrected Jesus says, all authority in heaven has been given to me. Like, I'm passing it along to you. I put my spirit inside of you. You should have no worries and no fear of the future. And we go, and he'd go, you have little faith. Just like the guys in the boat.
This came to the forefront, didn't it, when the pandemic began to play out? people's fear levels just rose dramatically, including a lot of Christians who struggled at that point to have their trust in Jesus because they were so fearful of what might happen with the pandemic, that they would lose their life or their loved ones.
And we see Jesus' provision for people, care for people. You brought that up from Mark's account. They get to the other side safely.
They do.
And then they encounter this demon-possessed person. Demons possessed? How would we reference? In Mark's account, too, is this guy was violent, but no chain could hold him. Like, he had incredible, Thor-like strength.
Why do you go Thor? Why didn't you go
He's
like
the
Hulk?
strongest Avenger.
Is he?
I'll just throw that out there. And he would wander in the night and howl, and he would cut himself, and he would he was just possessed.
Yep, he was.
Again, like people in the night, crackheads. It's literally, there's a lot of connection, I think, there between. I know I was joking around earlier, but like we have drugs, and but there's also a possession of demons and oppression that is influencing us on a spiritual realm that manifests itself physically, and we just kind of always relegate it to mental health or a physical thing, biological thing, when I'm like, there's a spiritual aspect there that we are undermining in our culture. And the demons are talking to Jesus. What do you want with us, Son of God? Now that's still kind of creepy, freaky to me, right? Like, it's because it's not the guy. He's not in his right mind. Because the demons asked to be sent out into the herd of pigs. So he's having this conversation with the demons in this guy, right?
Yep. This guy is, like I said it earlier in the podcast, this guy is the extreme when it comes to demon possession. I don't know of another account of Jesus casting out demons that is as dramatic, nor any other account where we have this much detail, especially if you go to the account in Luke. Luke provides a bunch of detail that Matthew and Mark omit about this guy, but they tried to chain him. He would bust loose. He was kept under guard, and he overpowered the guards. He was naked in the wilderness. He would cry out in the wilderness and act all strange, and this had been going on apparently for a long, long time. So this guy is tormented by this legion of demons. What's a legion? Is that 2,000, I think, in the Roman order of things?
We're back to military rankings. And,
yep, exactly.
I
But
don't
anyway,
know,
it's a bunch.
1,000?
It's a reference to the Roman military structure, and I think it's 1,000 or 2,000. Anyway, it's a bunch of demons.
It's way more demons than I want inside of me.
Exactly.
And I love it that we don't really have it super clear in here, but Jesus is having this conversation with the demons in through the context of faith here. Did the guy ask to be healed? Or did Jesus, out of his compassion and love for all people, heal the guy by freeing him from the legion of demons? And he cast them out, and they got in the pigs, and the pigs ran off the cliff. And then here's this guy in his right mind.
I'm going to go with door number 2, because I don't know in any of the accounts where it actually says, hey, would you set me free?
And like, he would show up, and it's not because of individuals' faith. Like, Peter's mother-in-law was sick. Was she conscious and awake, or did Peter, they showed up and Peter asked, or somebody else asked, and then he healed her? And then when the hyperbole of, I don't know if hyperbole is the over-exaggeration of like, well, you're not healed, Kyle, because of your lack of faith. Did this guy have faith? Or did Jesus just heal because of God's compassion and kindness?
Yep.
Right?
And again,
kind of in contrast to the guys in the boat, like, well, I'm not doing it because of your faith and it's all on you. It's like, it's the power of God at work, healing this guy and restoring him.
The interesting thing about this whole account is they go across the lake through the storm and that whole deal. When they get there, they encounter this guy. Jesus casts the demons out of him, and word gets to the people in town. The people in town come out and realize what has happened, and they do. I think it's very significant. They find the guy clothed and in his right mind. Where did his clothes come from? And
probably
what's
the disciples,
connection?
Gave out of their abundance and generosity, because that's what Jesus followers do. Is help others in need.
That's a good one.
You see naked people, clothe them.
Yep, exactly. But also, he's in his right mind, and there's that connection between demonic activity and mental health and all that. But then all of that takes place not in town. Jesus never goes to town. He just gets back in the boat and leaves. And it's very apparent that the express purpose of going across the lake was just for this guy. And not just for this guy, but because of what he would then do, what he would say, his testimony, his influence would probably, touch hundreds, maybe thousands of people as a result.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting specifically in Matthew's gospel, the way that he is spelling this out and telling the order of events as he recalls. These are really the first miraculous things we see in Jesus in his gospel. He starts with the kind of the more Sermon on the Mount teaching stuff, right? And these are not that other stuff that is recorded in the other gospels aren't supernatural, but they're more physical. Multiplying a fish, or even in the Matthew doesn't record that in the gospel, the nets and the overflowing of at the initial call of the.
We have earlier, like when he heals Peter's mother-in-law, other people came. He drove out demon-possessed people.
Yeah,
drove out the spirits, but not maybe to.
Yeah, well, so my point is that he really starts with this very supernatural, spiritual ideas with Jesus' healing. And I think that goes back to the point of who is this man? What is he capable of? It's not, he didn't just do other things that there was other weird things going on, and the people could do tricks and things and I've seen that done. I've seen someone do something that was pretty amazing, but this is the next level. I mean, I've never met anybody else who could tell the wind to stop and it stopped. I've never met anybody else who dealt with this level of again, maybe someone said, "Oh, I hope your fever gets better," and they prayed for it, or they laid on hands, or they went to the temple and that got better. Matthew is specifically going to these, I think, crazy levels of understanding. Look at what Jesus was able to do originally, almost first off in his ministry, that got us going, okay, this guy's the real deal. And his teaching that he just got done with now is emphasized by the things that he's doing that are otherworldly and supernatural power that this guy's got.
So on a recent podcast, we got to talking about why does Jesus so often tell people, hey, don't tell anybody what I did for you, just, go live your life. And we got into quite a discussion about that. But in this particular case, and it's not in Matthew, once again, it's in Luke, one of the details he provides us is that Jesus specifically told the guy, now go into the town and tell the people the great thing I've done for you. And so in this case, Jesus is, I think, trying to reach the people of the town through this guy, just like they reached the people of Sychar in Samaria through the woman at the well.
And maybe it's because
those are outsiders, probably.
And maybe it's because Jesus knew the hardness of their heart, because what the gospel authors do record is what Matthew says is they came out to meet Jesus, and then they're like, "Nah, we don't want you here. We don't understand this. This is too much for us to comprehend." This because they understood the craziness of Matthew says that there's multiple guys. It's not just one guy. So there's not just multiple demons, but there's multiple people possessed by those demons. And so they knew the craziness of the situation. Again, you guys mentioned the chains are breaking, the cuts. They live in caves. They're like trolls, basically, right? They experienced this crazy part of their town, and Jesus just changed it with a word. Literally, Matthew says, "All right, go." 3 words, and this whole crazy. What would have been like a cultural issue of their town that was all this stuff. Jesus changed it with 3 words, and they're like, "We don't have a category for this yet. If you could just leave, that'd be great, because this is a little too much for us."
Did he have one word to calm the waves and the wind too? It's not in Matthew. I don't know in the other accounts. Did he say stop there and go for the demons?
Yeah,
basically is what.
I don't agree, but in some accounts it's winds be still or something like that.
Yeah. So he said stop to them and go to the demons, and I don't know. I'm just thinking in the moment here. But woman at the well, this situation, there's a pig farmer. Well, that wouldn't be Jewish people. They're not in on pigs. So the people he's trying to reach are the outside of Israel people. So the Gentiles, more receptive to, hey, we need to see the Messiah, this king that has been coming, where the Israelites were on the lookout, and then Jesus showed up and it was different than they thought. So there was a lot of pushback, and spiritual leaders were like, it's not you, it can't be this way, blasphemous. And then they told him to leave. They couldn't understand it. Probably the guy with the pigs was like, are you going to pay me back? You just ruined my business here. And I think Jesus did. I don't have that here, but it's the character of God. He just didn't send the guy's whole herd and go, well, on your own, buddy. He wouldn't take care of the one person and then leave the other person financially. There had to be something there, right? That's Jesus. That's what God would do. Anyways, Craig, I don't know if you were aware, like you were preaching this last week, and you just said his.
Yeah, were you aware that you were preaching? When you were up there?
No, I sometimes just wake up in the middle of a message and realize,
get to
How did I get here?
how did I get here?
Sometimes I've had those moments. You're like, what am I saying right now? I am talking, but I have no idea. Is this coherent? Have I already said this point in this slide? You're aware of the song "My Testimony" from Elevation? In the bridge, it says, "If I'm not dead, I'm not done." And you kept making it, and greater things are still to come. And then you said, for this guy, like he's in his right mind, his testimony to share his eyewitness account of the healing power of God.
Yeah.
And so like I'm texting the guys, I'm like, we should sing the song at the end. Like it's so powerful. We didn't because it's a lot to put together there in 5 minutes. But I'm like, yeah, if we're not dead, we're not done. And as you share your faith, right, is you're sharing of like, I was a crazy person, met Jesus, and he just casted all the demons out. Now I'm in my right mind and back to community and my family and doing good for the world. And we just share our story of like being changed by Jesus. And Lord, help us with our faith in the times where we have doubts. But man, we can really see Jesus' supernatural power spiritually, physically, that God will provide for all of our needs, and that our faith should rest in him, because where else are we going to turn? So.
And I think just in closing, I think for some of us that might be overwhelming, and how do I do that, and how do I experience that? I think and I'm going to talk about this week, so it's a little bit foreshadowing. I think the really easy, tangible first step is just for us to put ourselves in those positions to be with Jesus, to abide in Jesus, to remain in Jesus, because we will experience those things there. I think sometimes we're just like, oh, I've never experienced anything like that, and I don't know what to do, and I don't even know my first step. If you spend time with Jesus like these guys did, you're going to experience some amazing things. So just lean into Jesus and just watch what happens. Just take those steps closer to him, lean into him, and you'll experience some amazing things in life.
Well, and we hope you have a great week doing that. We'll see you next time on the podcast.